Grab a coffee, pull up a chair, and welcome to this explainer. If you're a junior scholar just starting out, academia probably feels like this massive maze of locked doors and secret passwords. Well, today, we're going to demystify the whole shebang together. We are going to walk right through those unwritten rules of academia and figure out how to actually navigate the academic publishing ecosystem.
Right off the bat, here's a fundamental truth you really need to internalize. Knowledge is not produced in a vacuum. When you're sitting there all alone staring at your laptop, it's so easy to feel completely isolated. But the truth is, your writing is actually a continuous, living dialogue with generations of global scholars. Through your references and your critiques of past work, you are literally placing yourself into a massive intellectual network. All right, let's dive right into Section 1, the academic publishing ecosystem. It is definitely time to redefine how we view this whole process.
Notice how we're framing this network as an actual ecology. Academic publishing isn't just some giant, mindless printing press churning out papers. Once your manuscript leaves the safety of your supervisor's desk, it enters a rigorous, highly public ecosystem. It becomes part of a quality filtering mechanism that's governed by very specific professional actors.
So who are the main players keeping this ecosystem humming? First up, you have the journals. And listen, these aren't just brand names. They are actual institutions with their own distinct intellectual personalities. Next are the editors. They're your gatekeepers. But they don't just judge. They manage the systemic flow of knowledge. And finally, the peer reviewers. These are the disciplinary experts in your field. I want to assure you right now, the decisions made by these actors are systemic and structured. They absolutely are not based on personal whims or some sort of vendetta against you.
Moving on to Section 2, Myths versus Reality. It's time to shatter some of those common illusions that tend to paralyze young researchers and just cause so much unnecessary anxiety.
Okay, the first major misconception is this sort of naive idea that academic journals are just completely neutral dumping grounds for good writing. They absolutely are not. Every single journal has an identity, and that's shaped by its history, its theoretical approach, and the specific priorities of its editors. You can't just send the genuinely great paper anywhere and expect it to stick.
Which brings us to the most painful myth of all: rejection. Look, it's so easy to view rejection as a personal failure or a glaring sign that you just don't belong. But the reality, rejection is a completely normal rite of passage. Even the most famous, highly cited, tenured professors get rejected. You really have to view rejection as structural feedback from the academic community designed to improve your work, not as some final judgment of your self-worth or your intellect.
Another huge trap is treating publication like a lottery, just hoping you get the lucky reviewer on the right day. In reality, getting published is not about luck at all. It is driven by meticulous strategy and solid preparation. The novice habit is just submitting papers blindly. But the professional strategy? That's about tailoring a manuscript specifically to a journal's scope and refining it relentlessly.
So how exactly do we strategize? That brings us to Section 3, choosing a target journal. Let's talk about finding the absolute perfect home for your research.
The absolute first step, honestly, before you even finalize your manuscript, is understanding a journal's aims and scope. What theoretical approaches do they usually publish? Are they big on case studies, or do they prefer empirical research? If you send a beautifully written manuscript to a journal without truly understanding its intellectual focus, it's going to be considered irrelevant before it's even deeply read.
You have to ask yourself this one critical question. Who are you trying to convince? Are you writing for very niche disciplinary experts who demand dense theory and hyper-specific terminology? Or are you writing for an interdisciplinary crowd that needs a bit more broad context and inclusive language? Your conceptual language simply must match your audience. This all builds directly into what we call the fit test. Your research topic, your methodology, and your epistemology, which is basically your underlying philosophy of how knowledge is created, must perfectly align with the journal's DNA. If you send a highly critical interpretive paper to a journal that strictly demands positivistic hard data science, you will be rejected, period, no matter how strong your analysis actually is.
So the crucial point here is figuring out your value add, your genuine contribution to the knowledge base. What are you bringing to the table? Are you offering brand new findings? Maybe reevaluating old arguments or expanding concepts into totally unexplored contexts? Simply repeating established facts won't survive the review process. You have to answer the "so what" question explicitly.
All right,
Section 4, Criteria and Guidelines. Here's where we unpack the unwritten contract between you, the author, and the journal.
Listen closely here. The author guidelines are not polite suggestions. They are standard requirements of professionalism. We are talking strict word limits, specific font types, line spacing, and citation styles like APA or Chicago. Ignoring these formatting rules basically sends a silent message of disrespect to a very overworked editor. It tells them you don't even take your own work seriously.
And please remember, clarity is the ultimate proof of academic maturity. You could have a genius-level analysis, but if your writing is messy, repetitive, lacks a clear thesis, or your arguments just don't flow logically, it will be rejected. Editors, frankly, just interpret poor organization as weak thinking.
So when your manuscript is finally sparkling clean and ready to go, keep in mind it's only one part of the submission package. You need a highly professional cover letter. This is your vital first impression where you confidently explain why your piece fits their journal perfectly. You're also going to need a contribution statement and an absolute commitment to an ethics declaration, ensuring total originality and integrity.
Okay, we've made it to Section 5, the peer review process. I really want to pull back the curtain on what actually happens after you hold your breath and finally hit that submit button.
The first thing to know is that the peer review culture is not some punitive courtroom trying to convict you of bad science. Try to see it as a collaborative purification of knowledge. It's simply the mechanism the community uses to maintain the quality of scholarship. The reviewers are really acting as critical readers, helping you plug the holes in your argument before it goes out to the public.
Your manuscript is going to run a 3-stage gauntlet. First up is the desk review by the editor, just to check for basic fit and formatting. If it survives that, it goes to Step 2, the peer review, for a really deep dive into your methodology and theory by experts. And finally, Step 3, the editorial decision, which is based on the reviewer's collective reports.
Now, if you get a desk reject right at Step 1, please take a breath and do not panic. It usually just means you had the wrong address, the scope wasn't a good fit, or you just missed some basic technical guidelines. In a way, it saves you months of waiting. Just fix the errors, reevaluate your target, and quickly pivot to a new journal.
When that final verdict does come back, you need to truly understand what it means. Accepted with absolutely no changes? Yeah, that's incredibly rare on the first try. If you get a revise and resubmit, celebrate. Honestly, this is the most common positive outcome, and it's a massive victory. It's your golden opportunity to improve. And if it's rejected after the full review, just try to separate your ego from the substantive critiques. Use that free expert feedback to rebuild your paper and send it somewhere else.
So I'm going to leave you with this final Mentors Challenge. Is your manuscript ready for the global debate? To survive and thrive in this ecosystem, you really need to develop a thick skin, genuinely embrace critique, and carefully strategize your submissions. The academic world is waiting to hear your voice, so step up, do the prep work, and confidently jump into the conversation. Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer, and seriously, best of luck with your writing. You've got this.